This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
All right, so before we get started, I want to apologize to anybody watching this on the video, because when I wear a white hat, the lighting in this room, I'm pretty much transparent right now. I'm translucent, so I apologize. It looks like there's just a headless person wearing a black hoodie right now on this podcast video.
A lot of white on white. Casper, the friendly podcast host.
It is out of control. All right, Greg, of course, the scouting combine this week, and you are traveling to Indy. Is it today or tomorrow you fly out?
Tomorrow morning I'm flying out.
So tomorrow morning, Greg flies out to go check out the scouting combine. And the first question I have for you about the combine, before we get into Belichick operating with agents and some of the particulars, just overall big picture, Greg, how did the Patriots approach this week as an organization?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we don't exactly know who's going to be there. It's quite possible that Belichick is not there. I doubt that. Normally he's there. There are a lot of coaches this year because we still don't know how many of the top prospects are actually going to work out. We've already heard like Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, guys like that are not going to be there. Belichick is not scheduled to speak to the media, as everyone knows. Once in a while he'll decide to drop in, but right now he's not scheduled to talk either of these next 2 days in Indy when general managers and head coaches are available. The Patriots will, do their due diligence. They will, have a box. They will, I'm sure Matt Groh, the new director of player personnel, this is sort of his first big event, with the official title. So it's his show now. Belichick relies a lot on those guys who have been studying these college players all year long, multiple years. And so, basically, Belichick is going to be free to do what he wants, talk to who he wants, watch who he wants, while the rest of the staff does sort of the heavy lifting as far as this week goes.
Now, the perception of this event, and look, I think the scouting combine, the reputation of the combine isn't getting any better. I've seen this week that there are a number of head coaches who are not even going to the event this year. There's this idea, I saw Mike Florio write about players getting paid to go to the combine might eventually come up, and this might become an issue. But we hear a lot about the back and forth between agents and personnel guys and coaches this week, that the trade stuff really starts this week. Those conversations, Jimmy Garoppolo, for example, with the Niners, those conversations will pick up. As far as Belichick and his interaction with agents, let's say J.C. Jackson's agent, how does he operate this week with those guys, Greg?
Yeah, that's the most important part of this week, especially when it comes to Patriots and Bill Belichick. So, like we've heard a lot of talk in recent weeks about J.C. Jackson hasn't heard from the Patriots since the season about his contract. Well, I mean, there's no need to, really. I mean, there's no deadline. So what will happen is Belichick will meet with a lot of the agents of his players. They also represent other players, but the big thing is he will most likely, or someone from the Patriots, it could be Matt Patricia if Belichick's not there or whatever, they will meet with J.C. Jackson's representatives, and they will, I doubt that they would put a contract offer out there for him, but they will discuss sort of, hey, what are you looking for? This is what we're willing to do. What kind of market do you think you have, even though they're going to tell the Patriots that they have a ton of interest from other teams. But, the big thing is like, a lot of us have discussed in recent weeks, what are the Patriots going to do with J.C. Jackson and the franchise tag? And the deadline is now Monday.
Right.
It's Tuesday right now. It'll be Monday. So, and I've talked about that. I've gone between, I think they're going to tag and trade him, to I think they're just going to let him hit the market, establish his value, maybe sign him back, maybe not. But really, the fact of the matter is, I don't think Belichick has really formulated his plans on what he's going to do yet. He's going to use the scouting combine, and he talks to a bunch of his buddies around the league. He will gauge their opinion on what they're hearing as far as the cornerback market, who might be interested in J.C. Jackson. Are you hearing anything on this? Are you guys interested? And this is the week where Belichick sort of formulates his plans. He goes there, he gets intel on his own players, their market, also, some of the free agents that he might be interested in, that sort of thing. This is really a fact-finding mission for Belichick, and then he determines what path he's going to go do. So a week ago, it might look like the Patriots are not going to tag J.C. Jackson. They're going to let him go to market. If he leaves, he leaves. That could all change this week, depending on what Bill Belichick hears. If he hears some team is ready to make J.C. Jackson a Jalen Ramsey-like offer of $20 million a year, then Bill might say, well, I'm going to tag him. And I'm going to see if that team's interested in trading for him, or I'm just going to keep him at $17.3 million for the year. Because when you look at it and how the cornerback market sort of settles after this year's free agency, maybe 17.3 for a starting caliber cornerback is not a bad deal, at least for 1 year. So that's sort of how Belichick operates. This is the week where he formulates all of his plans and sort of has a better sense of direction as far as where he's going to go in free agency, and then the draft can wait till later.
All right, so that's the most critical portion of this week and what Belichick's going to do. As far as the other stuff, I was just reading this morning about, Belichick, the Patriots, they're going to meet with Jameson Williams. They're going to meet with this guy. They're going to meet with that guy. Chris Olave, I think, is going to get a meeting. Everybody reports on these meetings. Do they mean anything in the big picture, Greg? Or is this kind of just speed dating for speed dating's sake, and you got to do what you got to do and dig in to some of these guys, but end of the day, not a huge deal?
It's just checking the box, Nick. And what people have to understand as far as how the media works. And I don't hate these guys because we all have jobs to do. And the job that we do at BSJ, like, we don't report on every single little nugget because we don't work on clicks. We work on the memberships and the people that support us. That was the whole point of BSJ, where we're not beholden, and trust me, I've seen it before. Like, remember that story that we did when I published the photos from Adam Reishens about how Bill Belichick grabbed Mac Jones by the wrist and let him off the field.
Yep.
That story got an absurd amount of clicks. Like, I mean, for days, and that comes from national Alabama people. Like, that story made BSJ a lot of money. But that's not what we do. I mean, there are a lot of sites who don't have subscriptions and memberships that's what they rely on, advertising dollars, that for every click you get so much money. So they're trying to publish as many stories as possible that get as many clicks as possible. That's their business model. I don't hate them on it. I don't love that that's the direction the system has gone, but that's just the way it is. And your alternative is to sell subscriptions like we do, and so that we stay focused on what's really important. So, this time of year, like, if you publish a story that says the Patriots have talked to the 3 top wide receiver prospects at the scouting combine, then people are going to click on that, even though it doesn't mean anything. And let me explain that, how it doesn't really mean anything. Number one, this is the first opportunity, especially given the COVID situation, that the Patriots will have to talk to underclassmen. Okay. Now, all the top seniors, they've been at the Senior Bowl. They've been at the East-West Shrine game. They've been at the, other all-star games. So the Patriots have been able to talk to all the seniors.
Right.
They have not had any face-to-face contact with any of the underclassmen. And so there are a few options. Talk to them at the combine. You can talk to them at their pro day, and you can get them on FaceTime as in the run-up to the draft. And the Patriots will probably do that, multiple times with multiple players. But this is the first time that the Patriots have an opportunity to talk to the underclassmen. So who are they talking to? According to Armando Salguero of Outkick.com, Chris Olave, Arkansas's Treylon Burks, and Alabama's Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams, of course, is coming off the ACL. That's going to be a big thing, and talking to him. But those are all underclassmen, and this is the first opportunity that the Patriots can get intel. So that's what it's really about, that they need to, as opposed to the seniors who they've talked to, they have a bunch of information on, the underclassmen from the scouting combine through the draft are really going to be the emphasis as far as the Patriots just getting background information. And that's what it's about. It's not an indication of their interest. And also that they're starting with wide receivers. The first groups coming through through Indianapolis are the quarterbacks, the receivers, and the tight ends. They have a quarterback. They signed 2 tight ends. They have Devin Asiasi. They need to do some work on wide receivers. So that it's the wide receivers first is no indication of anything. They're just in the first group that comes through Indianapolis.
It's the due diligence pretty much on these guys that they want to make sure nothing slips by them. They want to make sure that everything is on their radar. As you said, the Jameson Williams ACL tear, how's he feeling, what he thinks that process is going to feel like and look like. All of that is just checking the box and making sure that you have as much information as possible on any of these guys. Because even if you don't draft them, and we talk about this all the time, Greg, even if you don't draft a guy, you still might have some interest in him down the road. And so you go back to everything that you've done. And it goes to the combine, it goes to the joint practices, it goes to preseason games. Everything, every little morsel of information that an NFL team can gather on a guy is what they want to gather. And so,
and that's a good point by you. And just to let people know about, you're absolutely right about that. Like the Patriots, even if they don't quote unquote have interest in a player now, they will grade and evaluate every single player in this draft. So that say somebody comes available, say it's not working on their team. And we've seen it before. The Patriots trade for players, whether it's like, say, Martellus Bennett, like when it goes to evaluating whether they want to trade for a player, or maybe there's maybe he becomes a free agent or sign him in restricted free agency. The Patriots always start at, what was our college evaluation with him? Did we like him? What did we not like? What have we then it moves on to the pro film. But really everything starts with the grade and the evaluation that they gave these guys coming out in the draft. And that gives the Patriots a baseline for their evaluation on all these guys.
Mike Reese, I know he just kind of touched on J.C. Jackson a little bit, but Reese ranked the Patriots' odds of tagging Jackson as low. If you were a betting man, Greg, where do you think this ends? Do you think Reese is onto something and you find it somewhat hard to believe that the tag is what they do? I didn't mean to choke you up. Jeez.
Yeah. Look, everybody who reads BSJ and listens to this podcast knows I've kind of, I've been breaking this down and I've been tag and trade for a long while. I do. As of this moment, before the scouting combine, I came down to, after I talked to, an NFL personnel executive, a couple of them, and sort of talked to them about J.C. Jackson, what the Patriots might do. And, the consensus that I got from these two guys, and they could be the outliers. They could be, the rest of the league could think J.C. Jackson is an all-pro shutdown guy. I don't know. But both of these personnel executives told me that they view J.C. Jackson as a good, solid starter, but nothing more. That he's not a top 5 cornerback, and they have no interest in paying him there. That being said, he's really the only really good guy available on the free agent market. So that should help him. But I think this is, like we said before, I think this is a big week as far as intel. I'll be asking teams and my sources when I finally see them in person, because there was no combine last year. So this is sort of getting back to the natural order of things. I'll be able to, talk to some people this week and get a better gauge. And I'm sure it'll start to leak out. I bet we hear something about, this team's going to make a run at J.C. Jackson and things like that. As of right now, I agree with Mike. I think that the Patriots don't tag him and they let him go. But you never know what Bill's going to hear this week. And you also don't know how Bill's going to react. He could pick up a morsel at the franchise tag deadline, where it sounds like he gets intel that a team's going to make a major move for J.C. Jackson. Sort of like he's done this before. And I know Joe Thuney was one. That was a surprise. Joe Thuney all of a sudden at the last minute, and it was related to Tom Brady saying, I'm leaving. And the Patriots deciding to use that cap space on Joe Thuney. But all of a sudden at the last minute, the Patriots tagged Joe Thuney, and we've been over it. The Patriots ended up wasting $13 million and blowing a third-round pick by tagging him that year. And we've seen it before. It's escaping my mind, but there was another time where Belichick tagged somebody at the last minute. So as of right now, I agree with Mike. But I've already sort of swung one way to the other on this. I reserve the right to change my mind again this week after I also hear some intel. But as of right now, I'm saying no tag and they let him go. But I'm starting to inch towards tag him. And if somebody was really dead set on J.C. Jackson, hey, let's come to some sort of trade agreement. You can get him whatever contract you were going to offer him.
And of course, the tag would be about $17 million for those who might not know or might not remember. One more thing from Reese this week that I wanted to ask you about as far as what you're hearing. He reports that there's no bad blood between McDaniels and Belichick. And there was some question whether or not Belichick would have a hair across his tuchus with McDaniels taking some of the assistant coaches off of the staff. Reese says no, there's no bad blood. Do you hear the same thing? No bad blood between McDaniels and Belichick?
That's what I have heard as well. And actually, I heard Josh McDaniels did an interview recently with, I want to say it was either Jim Rome or the Dan Patrick Show, somebody. And McDaniels made some sort of reference to that. Like, he didn't come out and quite say it, but the phrasing that he used led me to believe that that he basically said that he did things the right way in terms of how he's done this and gone about filling his staff, and that that there weren't any ruffled feathers with the Patriots. And I also think that, having Matt Patricia and having Joe Judge available, makes it a little bit easier on Belichick in his mind. Now, whether that ultimately works out for the Patriots and Mac Jones, we'll have to see about that.
Yeah, I'm not thrilled about that offensive staff right now. Not thrilled at all.
Yep.
Let's talk about somebody who, might be sneaking under the radar for some people, and that's Nick Folk. He's a free agent. And, of course, he's up there in age, but he's been incredibly consistent for the Patriots. What do you think the Patriots do? Again, it's kicker. It's like one of those things that people might toss aside. But when you have a young quarterback, when you have kind of an unknown offensive staff, I think you're going to play a number of close games, which really means the kicker is a critical piece of your team. Do you think they bring Folk back? Do you think they bring competition in? What do you think they do with him?
I think, Nick, that they've gotten to a very comfortable place with Nick Folk in terms of as far as what they're going to do, how they operate with the contract. Like, if you remember a year ago, and part of this had to do with injury, but, for a long time, Nick Folk wasn't even on the roster. And I don't even know if he was on the roster to start training camp. And remember, he didn't make the team initially, and everybody was just like, whoa, what? Quinn Nordine's going to be the kicker. He's a rookie. He was awesome. And I kept telling people, I'm like, Nick Folk's going to be a starting kicker week one. And that ended up happening. I think Nick really likes it here. I think they basically have an agreement like, look, Nick, we want you back at least for a camp competition with Quinn Nordine. We don't know whether he's going to be ready or not. But, we really value you. If somebody comes after you and gives you an offer, let us know. Give us an opportunity to match or to consider it. And, then we'll make a decision. But, we're really comfortable with you. We're really happy with you. I think that's sort of the way they're going to operate right now, because you also have to remember, if the Patriots decide to tag J.C. Jackson, and this is even before they sign anybody else or re-sign any of their free agents, they're going to have to create cap space. I mean, if they tag J.C. Jackson, they're going to have to create the cap space like in the next week. Now, there are easy ways to do that, but if you don't need to do it, if you don't need to give Matthew Judon a bunch of money up front to spread out his cap hits and reduce his cap number, then you don't want to have to do it. So all of these things come into consideration.
I'm so glad you just brought that up, and that's why I asked about Folk first, because I wanted to follow that up with some of these decisions. And we don't have to get into great detail if you don't want to. We can probably do this in another pod. But, the next phase of the offseason is figuring out the cap, doing some cleanup things. Just some names, Greg, that you believe might, over the next few days, be wondering if their phone is going to ring about, oh, you just got cut, or the Patriots would like to rework your deal. Just a couple of names.
From me? Okay, I thought you were going to give me a couple.
No, just a couple names on this roster that you think could be vulnerable to being cut or having their contract reworked.
Well, I think that, the first one you look at is, Kyle Van Noy.
Yeah.
That, look, I think Kyle Van Noy is, a good player. I think that, he saves you a couple $1 million against the cap. I don't think that his cap number is $7.4 million for next year. Is that really something you want to see on your books? And we talked about this last year, Nick, that, we were asking the question coming out of training camp. All right, well, where is Kyle Van Noy going to play?
Right.
If you have Matthew Judon on one edge and you're doing things on the other edge, and, he's not really a linebacker, and, that ended up being the case. There were a lot of times. So he's a good guy to have around as a Mr. Fix-It. He can get you straight at linebacker. He can get you straight on the edge and give you good, minutes and play the run well. But is that worth, more than $3 or $4 million per year? I have my doubts about that. Matthew Judon is a guy that if you're looking to restructure, you basically give the base salary, or you give it to him basically most of it, and he's supposed to make $11 million. You give that to him, say $10 million of it in a signing bonus. You can prorate it over the length of his contract. And so all of a sudden his cap number goes down to, say, like, $10 million or less than that. So you can pick up money there. I don't know if I'm crazy about that, Nick, considering the way he finished the year. How can you be sure, like, okay, well, we're just going to get in more cap jail with his contract after what we saw in the last 5 or 6 games? Hunter Henry is a guy I would do it with. Yes, injuries are always going to be an issue with him. And you think, all right, well, he was healthy last year. Chances of him being healthy this year, given his career, are not good. So, I don't feel great about, doing too much to his contract. But look, he's a valuable guy. There's no reason he's not going to be valuable going forward. Even if you get half a season from him, he's valuable in the red zone. Mac Jones loves him, blah, blah, blah. Jonnu Smith, I don't know. That is a tough one to sort of gauge. He was the guy that really they went after. It was Aguilar and Jonnu Smith that they went after first in free agency. The best option as far as the cap for him is you trade him after June 1st. And basically it comes to sort of a salary cap net. You can get rid of him. It's funny, overthecap.com has his valuation at $3 million after this season. And he's supposed to make his cap number is nearly $14 million going forward the next 3 years. So
he was so disappointed last year.
I know. And we've sort of talked about it, but people are just like, once they get through the season, they're like, oh, well, and they'll use Josh McDaniels quotes against him, where Josh McDaniels says, I need to find a way to get the ball into his hands and blah, blah, blah. Josh McDaniels is just saying that. If you believe that's actually what Josh McDaniels believes, you're completely nuts. His struggles had nothing to do with how he was utilized. It had to do with his blocking, which his run stuffs led the team. His drops led the team. That he'd stop his feet every time the ball was thrown to him and didn't get much yak. Those are a couple of the guys, and Nelson Aguilar, depending on what they want to do at receiver. Do they think they need to upgrade there? He's a guy that could move. Godchow, everybody knows how I feel about him. I did not think that he earned his money this year. That's a guy that I would be looking at to possibly move on from. But they might wait to see, hey, what do we do in the draft? Do they get Jordan Davis from Georgia in the first round? And then they say, we don't need Godchow anymore. We can trade him. So there's a lot of stuff that most of this, the team that the Patriots have, most of them are going to go to training camp or at least to offseason workouts. And then they sort of gauge from there what they want to do.
All right, let's get to the BostonSportsJournal.com member question of the day. Check them out at BSJ. $39.99 on the annual plan. Not only do you get top-notch analysis of all the Boston pro sports, but if you're a Patriots junkie, and of course you are, a membership at BSJ gives you access to a ton of video analysis Bedard does on the coach's film and direct access to him in weekly chats. Greg, what do you got for us this week?
So this is sort of an offshoot of something I wrote in my Sunday column where in the nickel package, I talked about, I basically was like, I was giving praise to Troy Aikman for him moving on and getting a bunch of money. And I contrasted that to Tony Romo. I just basically what I said was, let me just check what I said. I said, good for Troy Aikman. If he is indeed moving on to Monday Night Football at a reported $17.5 million annually, if Tony Romo is getting $18 million, and he's basically been going through the motions since he got the extension, then Aikman, who has worked at this for years and knows what he's talking about, should definitely be in the same ballpark. And Scott Cohen said, why have you been down so much on Romo recently? Second time you've mentioned him mailing it in. I don't get it. Look, I don't watch a lot of games with the announcers, but I watch, some of the big games. And so I hear a lot of Aikman and, the postseason and things like that. And I'm sorry, Tony Romo, his first season compared to now, it's night and day. You can, to me, he sounds like he doesn't study anymore, that he doesn't put the work in. Yes, he'll do his quarterback thing about like, I think they're going to do this. I think they're going to do that. But you can tell he doesn't really study up on these teams and the things that didn't used to be the case his first season when he was actually trying to be good at it and get a big contract. To me, ever since he got the big contract, he's just mailed it in that he is not the same guy. Whereas Troy Aikman, I think, has always put the work in. His observations have always been on point, or at least they're based in, film study. And he has strong comments. Romo just sort of, gets all excited. Oh, hey, Jim, here's a big play and things like that, where Aikman will tell you the truth about like this guy's not playing well or this guy is. So that is why I've been down on Romo. I just don't think he's nearly as good as he can be or should be, whereas Troy Aikman's been working at this a long time and is on top of his game right now.
All I'll say is this, like, if you can get that money, good for you. If you're getting, 17, 18 million a year to call games, I mean, that's just truly tremendous money. I don't get it from the network side. As a fan, I never say to myself, oh, I've got to turn this CBS game on because Tony Romo's doing it. I mean, I don't think anybody watches the games because of the color commentator. Of course, they add to it and they have an important job, but I just paying $18 million a year for somebody to tell us a lot of stuff that we mostly already know. I think it's a waste of money for some of these networks. But hey, again, I'm not going to hate on Aikman. I'm not going to hate on Romo. Get the money when you can get the money. And I would also say, for ESPN, even though I would disagree with paying anybody 17, 18 million a year to do what they do, I would say Aikman is a fantastic get for ESPN. They have tried that Monday Night Football thing. I thought personally John Gruden was incredibly annoying. I think Aikman is going to be fantastic for them. And I think Aikman is going to be fantastic on the other shows, which nobody's really talking about. Everybody's talking about Monday Night Football, but I can guarantee you Aikman will be looped into some of this other ESPN coverage. And I think he'll be fantastic when he's in the studio. I think he'll be fantastic when he's, doing those Sports Center hits with Scott Van Pelt after Monday Night Football. I think he is going to be a great asset for them. And if you're ESPN, that's where the money comes in. If you're going to pay him, $17.5 million, it's not just Monday Night Football. Again, I have to imagine he'll do some other things as well, and they will utilize him to his fullest extent. But it'll be interesting. Sean Payton meeting with Amazon. We had a story last week. Sean McVay was offered $100 million to leave the Rams and work for Amazon. There's stories out there about Brady and how networks are willing to pay him $25 million a year to get in the booth or, some kind of booth/studio combination role.
Mm-hmm.
So the money is gigantic right now. Well, Greg is going to be traveling out to Indy for the scouting combine this week, and of course to catch some Rutgers basketball. Safe travels, Greg. We hope you do well out there.
Thanks, buddy.
Is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles, brought to you by betonline.ag. Fastest, easiest way to bet all of your favorite sports. Everyone have a great rest of your week. Be safe, be good, be healthy, and we'll catch up next week. And I'm sure Bedard will have all sorts of notes from the combine, and we'll talk about more than that. It'll be a lot of fun. Until then, everybody be good.